Welcome to Laps and Legends. I am your host, Scott Trayer, and this is my co-host, Callie Vinson. Laps and Legends, we're going to be talking about the Desert Solstice 24-hour Track Invitational. This event has a lot of meaning to me. I have raced, this will be my 5th year racing at the event. And Callie, what is your background here?
I have not raced it. However, I have crewed 3 times, something like that. This will be my second time crewing you. So, second time handing out some croissants.
Hence the croissants in the photo.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we get into it? What exactly is the Desert Solstice 24-hour Track Invitational? So as it reads, it is an invitational event. You cannot just register for it. You need to qualify. It is an event. It's pretty unique in the ultra running space in that this is held on a 400-meter rubberized track here in Central Phoenix High School. The field is limited to, at max, 25 athletes, and that is so the track does not get crowded, because one of the major goals of this event is to get these elite athletes down here to try to break American records, world records, age group records, to try to qualify for their national teams. So during that 24 hours, the athletes are going to change directions on the track every 6 hours. So every 6 hours you change direction. You do that 4 times throughout the race. Each athlete is provided a 10 by 10 tent on one of the straightaways. So if you look at the event, going down one of the straightaways, you're just going to see a line of 10 by 10 canopy tents in lane 3 and 4. So lanes 1 and 2 are reserved for the athletes running. So you generally stay in lane 1. If you need to pass an athlete in front of you, you simply pass them on the outside of lane 1. If you're maybe not having the race you hoped for and you have to walk, then the organization asks, hey, can you move into lane 2 and reserve lane 1 for those athletes that are still trying to hit their goals. The other straightaway has a few porta potties.
Oh, that's nice.
That is nice. Literally every second counts. So they line up a few bathrooms there. So in the case you have to use the restroom, you do not need to go far. You simply step off into lane 3 or 4. There's some porta potties, and then you are right back on the track. This event was specifically put in the month of December here in Phoenix because generally we see high temperatures in the upper 60s, lows in the 40s. It's generally a clear, dry day, although occasionally we do get a little bit of rain. It's happened a few years. And like I said, a lot of athletes will come here as just the premier event to try to qualify for their track and field national team. It's not just U.S. athletes. We have international athletes. So why don't we get into exactly how do you qualify? Like, what are those standards to get in? There is an A and a B standard. Mm-hmm. So if during the 2 years before that year's event, if you hit an A standard qualifier, which comes in 50 miles, 100K, 100 miles, or 24, if you hit an A qualifier, you are automatically put into the event. If you happen to run a B qualifier and want to come into the event, you're kind of put on a wait list to just sort of see, okay, are we going to have 25 A qualifiers? Or if not, let's start getting some of those B qualifiers to try to fill out that 25 athlete field. So Callie, why don't you just kind of like walk us through those A and B qualifiers for all of those distances for men and women?
Yeah. So like you said, you can't just step onto the track and get into this race. You do have to qualify, and those qualifications they're tight. They're very tight. So for the 24 hours, miles wise, for men, your A standard is 147 miles. So you've got to run a race that equals up to 147 miles to qualify. B standard for men is 134. For women, your A standard is 132 miles, and then the B standard would be 120. For the mile distance race, that men's standard time would be a 14:15, and then your B standard is a 15:40. For women, your A standard for a 100-mile race is 15:50. B standard would be 17:25. Now, if you run a 100K race, the men's A standard would be a 7:35, and then your B standard is 8:20. For women, that would be an 8:25 A standard. B standard would be 9:15. Now, if you do a 50-mile race and you think, hey, maybe that could qualify, you've got to run that. Men, A standard is 5:50, and then your B standard is 6:25. For women, that A standard would be a 6:30, and your B standard would be a 7:05. So, like I said, those are some
folks.
Yeah, you got to be just zipping along in these races to qualify.
Not your first rodeo if you're coming to Desert Solstice. You've been in the sport. You are performing well. Uniquely, while this generally is a 24-hour event, the race organization does encourage participants of different age groups that maybe want to come that perhaps haven't hit those qualification standards. So maybe you're a 60 to 64-year-old age group athlete and you want to try to set a record there. And we've seen that before. And we're going to talk to one of our guests later about some of the competition we've seen in the older age groups, which is so cool. So literally, if you wanted to run a shorter distance, 5K, 10K, whatever it could be, you could, apply through the website. Aravaipa will go out of their way to get the distance that you're running certified to the track. They take care of all of the record procedures. It's so cool. They literally go out of their way to put this event on. I can't imagine it's a money-making event for them. It's literally to try to push the sport forward. It is so cool. And for those wondering, for the athletes to get on or to try to qualify for that 24-hour national team, the minimum standards right now for the 2025 national team are going to be women are 125 miles and men are 140 miles. There are some auto qualifiers, like if you got on the podium at last year's World Championships, you're automatically qualified to be on the team. Or if you've won the U.S. Track and Field National Championship and hit a minimum number of female 130, male 145. There are 6 spots up for grabs. 6 men, 6 women make the team. We already have about a dozen women that have qualified for the team for 2025. So just because you've hit that minimum number, you are not guaranteed on the team. You got to be in that top 6. For men, I believe we have 7 athletes qualified right now. And I think most of the field knows that that minimum standard's no good. You're going to need a bigger number. And that has drawn a very competitive crowd this year. So it's just a really cool event. And to kind of talk on how competitive this has been and what kind of records, Callie, why don't you tell the audience how many records have been set on this at this event since its inception in 2010?
Yeah, when I first heard these numbers, I was pretty impressed because it's just this 400-meter track that these very competitive athletes are coming to. But the number of records that have been set on this high school track, bananas. Were you about to say something?
No.
Okay.
Go right.
So, in total, there have been 109 American records set at this track. There have been 5 Canadian records set on the track and 15 world records set at Desert Solstice. So, that in itself,
it's
a historic track, right
is.
In the middle of just a random part of Phoenix.
Center Phoenix. There's an energy. Like I said, I've been out there 5 times. I don't know. It's just special. Yes, it's just another 400-meter track. But when you think of the history of this event, there's just like an energy out there. It's so, I mean, at least to me, it's so special. And it's it's just really unique in that, again, there's people coming for world records. Let me talk about some of the records that kind of get set here. Of course, there's world records for open, which would be, hey, you've literally just ran the most distance anyone has ever ran for 24 hours or 100 miles or whatever distance you're going for. That would be an open record. Like, it is the best mark ever performed at that time or distance. There's also national records. So maybe it's not good enough for a world record, but it's the best that anyone in the United States has ran. Or like you said, we have 5 Canadian records here. We have some Norwegian athletes coming this year to try to set some records. We have a French athlete coming this year who is the French record holder, again, trying to set some French records. And then we have age group records. So like age 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and those go all the way up. We get, like I said, we get some 60-year-old athletes out here that have gotten pretty competitive. So again, I've been on the track. I have seen some of these records. I don't know how to describe it. It's so cool. It's not just cool for the open records, but when you see a 60-year-old athlete out there pushing to the max, we'll talk about the 2011 where Jay Aldis came here and set for a 50 to 54, set 100-mile world records, and like how that kind of really pushed this event forward. We'll talk to some of our guests about that coming up. But Callie, I mean, you've been here to crew. You know some of the energy that's been here. Like, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions on this event, and like what makes it, say, different than a trail event from a crewing perspective? And what have you seen like out on the track that has just maybe inspired you?
I mean, there are just so many parts about this race that are so different from your typical trail ultra marathon. Of course, just because of where it's set and all that. But from a crewing perspective, it's unique because we're not going anywhere. We're all staying right there in our tents.
The runners aren't going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. You always have sights on them. So when you go into the bathroom, I see that. When I see a runner throwing up in a trash can across the track, I see that. We all see that. Hopefully the camera doesn't see it. But yeah,
that is unique, huh? Yeah, you get to see everyone's race.
You get to see everyone's race, the highs, the lows of everyone. Because, sometimes in trail races, you've got, 10 miles to go before you get to the next crew point. So you can go through a whole roller coaster of emotions in those 10 miles. But 10 miles on a track where everyone is just right there with you, we go through it with you as well. So when you guys are going through the highs, we're cheering as well. When you're going through lows, we're quiet just like you are. And it's also interesting because these athletes, because of the distance that they're going around this track, it's so dialed. So, and nutrition, because really that's what the crewing is just making sure you're getting the right nutrition at the right time. Depending on the time of day, if it's hotter, if it's colder, are we icing you? How many laps are you going before you get more ice, before you get more nutrition? Are you going to a sweet snack, a salty snack the next lap? And it's kind of nice because if you don't need something that lap, you just say, I don't need anything, and you just keep going. Or you say you want ice cream the next lap. Okay, crew's going to work on that for the next lap. So it's kind of interesting in that, we're with you through the whole race, not just, 6 checkpoints along a 100-mile distance. It's the whole shebang.
Yeah, and as a runner, speaking from personal experience, it is really unique. Again, if you think of a trail race, right, you're going to see your crew, I don't know, a handful of times, 4 or 5 times. And for many, you are out there hours without seeing another soul. You're just through the woods, right? Or you're just running and it's just you out there. Or maybe you see another competitor here or there. But when you're on a 400-meter track, like Callie said, you're seeing everyone all the time. If you're in a competitive, standpoint, you can see the person in front of you. How far in front of you are they? There are leaderboards set up every time you cross the start-finish point. Your little chip goes off. It tells you how many miles you've gone, how fast your last lap is, where your competitors are at. And that's something you don't really have in trail racing. Sure, your crew can tell you, oh, so-and-so's maybe 15 minutes ahead, or they didn't look good. But in no other scenario are you looking at your competition who's maybe 15 minutes ahead, and you can gauge, oh, yeah, they don't look good. Oh, wow, they're looking really strong. So it is. It's really unique, and we're starting to see growth in these 24-hour events in terms of competition. Like, again, this year, the field is absolutely stout. And I think some of this is coming because we're starting to see a lot of different formats of racing and people getting excited about the backyard format, about the FKT formats, and of course, about this 24-hour format. There is something romantic about how far can I go in one day. And then when you pair that with how far can I go in one day on this 400-meter track, I mean, it's comparable, right? Whether you're doing this in Phoenix at Center High School or you're down in Australia, a 400-meter track in 24 hours is a 400-meter track in 24 hours. So it is so cool that you get to just go push yourself and then compare it to like, hey, where's the rest of the people in the world? Like, where do I stand on this? And that's kind of like where some of these records come in. So coming up on the show, we are going to have a few guests that have set some world records here, that have set some American records here. And we're going to kind of just dive in. We're going to talk to them. We're going to see like, hey, like what makes this different? What makes this event special? What does your prep look like? Why is it so hard, right? You're not going up and over mountains, going through rivers. You're just on this nice rubberized surface. Why do some of the athletes fall short on their goals? Why do some athletes not even want to come take a part of it? So it is. It's a really cool event. We're stoked to be bringing you laps and legends. So stay tuned. Callie, anything else to say?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to be here.
Stay tuned. We'll be back.